All right, well, if everybody, let's get ready. And if you've got your prayer books, either this one or the big one, either one's fine. And and if you've got your outline that I sent last week and the week before regarding chapter 18 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So that's what we're going to be talking from. Zara may need to go out and come back in. Maybe that's what her problem is. Oh, that's what she's doing, I think. Okay. All right, well, then I'll just recite one time these prayers and we'll do 3 times the short refuge. So we'll start on page 1, the altruistic motivation. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. And then we go to page 100 syllable mantra, page 8 and 9, or page 88 in the big book. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus, I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Now in Tibet, in Sanskrit. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwa Ha. And then page 12, the Sagaramati requested sutra. Likewise be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me, completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food and drink peacefully, enjoy it, and be satisfied, so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all the Maras be defeated, be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. So, we've been talking about the method, how to be on the path to attain enlightenment. So we're on chapter 18, the method of the aspects of the path, of the five paths. So the five path is the Fivefold Path of Mahamudra. So the Fivefold Path begins with the path of accumulation, and then the path of application, the path of insight, the path of meditation practice, and the path of complete perfection. So to put it in other terms, we would say that the path of accumulation is the path of bodhicitta, accumulating loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, so that we become the embodiment of that accumulation. And then the path of application would be the deity yoga, the way in which we approach the Buddha. The way is the deity yoga, going through and Chenrezig and Manjushri, all the different deities, the sadhana practices that we do to learn the perfection of what it is to be a Buddha. Included in that would be the Four Noble Truths. So that is the essence teachings of the deity yoga. And then the path of insight would be the guru yoga, recognizing the guru within yourself, your own wisdom that is the guru yoga. So we do that by meeting the guru who is our teacher, and which is a transmission of the Buddha and all the Buddhas, all the masters and so on, and then realizing that that is within ourselves. So that's the path of insight. The path of meditation practice is the Mahamudra. This is the Mahamudra mind, is the enlightened mind. and being able to be inseparable from that mind. And then the last is the path of complete perfection, which will be the dedication. That we now see all things as being the Buddha field, all perfect, and everything being making dedication for the Mahamudra to all beings. Okay. So then we went last week, we talked a little bit about the path of accumulation. We talked about that the bodhicitta is basically this path of accumulation that leads to the path of application, which is basically what I just said. And then we talked about the path of application, the deity yoga, which begins with the Four Noble Truths. So the noble truth of the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the truth of the Eightfold Path, which is the cause to be able to allow us to be able to have the cessation for suffering. So all of this, so this path of application is really a compassion. It's a compassion that we are doing. It's the wisdom, we're accumulating the wisdom, and we're accumulating the skillful means. So the wisdom is like the understanding how it is that we do purification and how it is that we heal. And then the compassion is the result of that. So we continue the conversation with the path of application. So this will be on the second page of the handout that I sent to you. So this is all listed in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So we're going to talk about the 5 powers of how does it express it? The 5 powers that are listed as branches of enlightenment. So these are the 5 powers, are sections 13 through 17 of the 37 branches of enlightenment. So here in these texts, you can dig this out. You can see this, but it's also in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So the 5 powers are during the stages of heat and maximum heat. The 5 powers of the 37 branches of practice. So this heat and maximum heat, so we talked a little bit about that, is, you know, the samadhi that we go into and the practices that we go into, the wisdom heat that we are cultivating. So when we get into the Tummo, when we get into the 6 yogas of Naropa, this is detailed in much greater detail, and you really need a teacher to guide you through this. That there are some instructions, but the instructions really require a teacher to guide you, because you know you need to have that objective master whispering in your ear, so to speak. So, but to understand what these principles, what the sections of these powers, what this is very important. So there needs to be the power of faith. So we've talked about faith. We talked about the 3 faiths. We talked about the trusting faith. We talked about the yearning faith, and we talked about the clear faith. So if anybody has any question about that, if you need to go into any detail, I can talk a little bit more about it. But if everybody's comfortable with understanding that, then I'll move on. Does anybody need to hear about the 3 faiths?
Is this something that you talked about last week, Lance?
No, I would have talked about it some weeks before.
Mm-hmm. Would you mind just briefly going over it?
Okay.
Thank you.
The power of faith means that, you know, that we have this trust in which that we are within ourselves. That first we have this yearning to be able to learn, to be able to want to know more, to be able to understand what this spirituality that is within ourselves, that we're not just satisfied with our physical, we're not just satisfied with our intellectual, but there's something spiritual that we are yearning for. So we have to trust that. And at some stage in our life, we kind of really give into that and say, okay, I've tried everything else. Now I'm going to, try and satisfy this yearning faith that I have, that there is something within myself that needs to arise. So this is the yearning faith. Then the trusting faith is the faith that we have in a teacher, or that we have in the scriptures, in the system. So whether it's the Buddhism or it's some other, leader in some other tradition or something like that, to have a faith in that master, in that teacher, who is going to impart to us the stages, the steps that they go through to be able to attain this yearning that we have, for our spiritual understanding. So we have to have a trusting faith in the teacher. We have to have a trusting faith in the scriptures, in the system. And then the third faith is a clear faith. And the clear faith is when we are putting that to action, that our yearning is now coming to fruition, and our trusting the master is now coming to fruition, that we are experiencing this with our practices. And we're seeing that which is what we've been yearning for, that which has been taught to us by our teacher, is actually happening. And we're seeing the transformation in our lives and so on. So this gives us the confidence through this clear faith that, yes, this does work. Yes, this is happening. Yes, I am changing. So this can be, an impetus for us to move on further. It may be an impetus for us to go back and deepen and widen that which we have been exposed to by our teachers and our masters, the scriptures and so on, to understand more about it before we, go further, so that we're sure that we are prepared, that we're sure that we're ready. So this is the power of faith, to have the power of faith. Then the next is the power of perseverance. So we did talk about that when we were talking about the paramitas, the perfection of the six perfections, the six paramitas. And so we need to have that power of diligence, of always moving forward, of not getting lazy and allowing ourselves to get forgetful and not, be doing practice diligently and so on. So the power of perseverance is very important on the 37 practices or branches of enlightenment. And then the power of mindfulness, to be aware of what it is that we're doing, understand what it is that we're doing all the time. If we're being lazy, that we understand being lazy. If we're relaxing, we understand that we're relaxing. If we're doing the practical things that we need to do to satisfy our mundane life, we're mindful of that. But we also then get mindful when we are, like I said, getting lazy or we're not practicing. So then we're mindful when we're practicing and what we need to do to practice. And we're mindful of the instructions that we've received from the teachers and from the scriptures. And we're doing that. We're mindful of the results of all that. So we're bringing all that into our awareness, into, our awareness is expanding. So we're seeing the changes in our life. So the power of mindfulness and the effect, the results that we have not only just on ourselves, but that we have on our friends, that we have on other beings and so on. And that, and then also how we are becoming inseparable with the flow of consciousness that we talk about sometimes as the tantra, as that stream of awareness, that stream of consciousness, the continuum that we become part of and so on. so that we become mindful of that, and that we become mindful of the virtue and the non-virtue that can cause suffering, that can cause damage to ourselves or to other people who are on that path that we may come in contact with. So mindfulness is the awareness of all these permutations of the way in which we are functioning. And then the power of absorption. So the power of absorption we haven't talked to about very much at all. Just one moment. So the power of absorption, being aware of that is what this is talking about, is meditative absorption. And there are certain hallmarks that we should be looking for, some intellectualization that is identifying the strata of what this absorption, what these absorption levels are. So first is that we should have conceptualization and discursive thought. So conceptualization is contemplation, is thinking about what all these things are and how they interrelate and so on. And it's a conscious thinking process. So it's part of our, learning things, either from books or from our teachers. And then we have to process that. We have to contemplate what all the permutations and the way in which it functions in our lives and so on. So we have to look at those concepts of what that is. And then we have to look at it with discursiveness. So discursiveness is looking at all the different various aspects of it. Discursive does not mean veering off in different directions. It might mean looking at a particular topic and looking at all the parameters of that particular topic. So it's discursively contemplating, thinking about a particular topic. The problem is we can get lost in discursive thought. We overthink things. So we have to be aware of that. So we need to recognize that when we do that. And, this is stated in many of the prayers and practices about discursive thought. So we need to be able to look discursively, but we need to be able to know when to rest too. So that's the first point of the absorption. So the next one is then we have non-conceptualization and no discursive thought. So that's the resting. So we reach that level of resting. And then the third one is now we have an awareness of what we're doing, an awareness of what this process is. And we're gaining this confidence. We're aware of this confidence that I know what I'm doing with this meditation. And with that comes equanimity and joy, that we're really enjoying this. We're finding this to be, the fruition of that yearning that we've had. And we're recognizing the sameness. We're recognizing this equanimity, that there is nothing special about my doing this, that everyone has this ability to be able to do it, although for whatever conditions and circumstances those individuals have, they're not recognizing it, they're not aware of it, they're not cultivating it. But I'm joyful, but I'm not thinking of it in an arrogant way. I'm looking at that this is available to all beings. So this is the third level of absorption. And then the next one is that the joyfulness goes away, that the joyfulness just rests, and you get beyond it, and you just become awake, and you just become the sense of all is the same. All beings are the same. They may not recognize it, but we're not, we're not having any prejudice or any judgment about them. All beings have that potential, and that we recognize that, and we're wakeful of that. So these are the power. This is the power of absorption, the meditation. This is called dhyana or dhyani. This is the dhyana, Dhyana. This is the wisdom awareness, the wisdom absorption. And sometimes the 5 Buddha families will be called the 5 Dhyana Buddhas because they are evoking, or they are bringing us to this absorption. We become absorbed with them. We become the embodiment of them. So if anybody has any questions about that, speak up. So then the next is the wisdom awareness. So the wisdom awareness is this insight. We talk about the vipassana, the power of vipassana meditation that is coming up and so on. So we could say that this absorption was part of shamatha meditation, the calm abiding meditation. And then out of that then comes the wisdom awareness, which is now this vipassana that comes up and so on. So these are called the 5 purified mental faculties of faith, perseverance, mindfulness, absorption, and wisdom awareness. To be, present, have the presence of mind to recognize this is what we are doing. It takes a while to really cultivate this. We may not recognize this right away. It may take, months and months. It may take a year. It may take a couple of years of practicing. And maybe, we begin as a intermittent practitioner. We do something, once a week or twice a week, or, but then slowly we start integrating this into a regular routine practice that we begin to do every day. And then as we begin to do this every day, now we really see progress being made. We really see things happening. The absorption really begins to take hold. And so we see this transformation. So we see these, and our mental faculties, all this begins to purify, all the confusions begin to go down, and we have much more control over ourselves, over our emotions and so on. And we spend more time being enjoyment, with the enjoyment body, the part of bodhicitta that is the enjoyment part, empathetic enjoyment and the equanimity. The loving kindness and the compassion are relatively simple to get to, but when, now to be able to sustain this joy, to be able to sustain this equanimity is requires a little bit more effort. But once we do that, then it becomes, kind of self-sustaining. It becomes something that now is an integral part of our day, an integral part of our lives, and so on. So this is purifying the mental faculties, is what this means. So we're controlling what we see, we control what we hear, we control what we taste, what we smell, and what we touch. So we're being virtuous. We're not doing things that are going to contaminate our senses, that are going to contaminate our mind, that is going to prevent us from being able to be in this absorptive state, to be at this wisdom awareness state. So things that might upset us, that would create emotions for us. Maybe it's reading certain things or watching certain kinds of films or movies or something like that, or engaging in certain kind of conversations. We might find that those things, are contaminations to my purification that I've been working on. So I'm going to marginalize those. I'm either going to learn how to use them a little bit, or to cut them off entirely. that, you know, I'm just going to stop doing that. So all this is about, you know, purifying ourselves, about using our time now for our meditation. So then, out of the 5 powers, we develop the 5 strengths. So these 5 strengths are now the next parts of, so it says here, during the stages of patience and highest worldly dharma of the 37 branches of enlightenment. So now we begin to feel, we really begin to become the embodiment of the strength of faith, the strength of perseverance, of mindfulness, of absorption, and wisdom awareness. So these are the 5, the skills, the 5 powers of the skills. So now we are mastering these and really utilizing these. So it says here that deity yoga is basically the path of application that leads to the path of insight, which is guru yoga. So that's the next part. So this path of application now is setting ourselves into becoming the deity, recognizing ourselves as the deity, to recognize ourselves as bodhisattva, to recognize ourselves as dakini, to recognize ourselves as the Buddha, to recognize ourselves as the Dharma protectors. So in order to do all that, we need to understand what each of those categories are. So we need to research, you know, if we don't know these things, we need to look into these things. We need to ask our teachers what these are. And maybe we're compiling our own glossary, or that we have, you know, in these books, many of these books, in the back of each of these books is a glossary, and they're very powerful, and be able to learn what all this vocabulary is, because, you know, it's a new way of behaving, a new way of thinking, and so on. So it's the deity yoga and learning all these different facets of this that is sustaining ourselves in this deity yoga. It's becoming our life is becoming the practice. So we have to know what the practice, the example of the practice, are the deities. So we talked about the 8 great bodhisattvas in the not too distant past. You know, we talked about those, and these are the human perfections. If you remember, I talked about that it's cultivation, it's wisdom, it's grace, it's devotion, it's transformation, it's wisdom, it's now higher wisdom, it's compassion, it's power, and it's purification. So these are the 8 human qualities, characteristics that we need to perfect. And these are the 8 great bodhisattvas that characterize that for us. So by knowing the 8 great bodhisattvas, we begin to know those powers within ourselves, what they mean at their highest level, their exalted level. So the second path of the Fivefold Path is the path of application. So next comes the path of insight. So this is the Guru Yoga. This is the 4 Kaya Guru Yoga. Why is it called the path of insight? Because there one realizes the 4 noble truths that were not seen before. So now we're seeing the 4 noble truths that have been taught to us, but now we're really experiencing them and seeing the causes and results. That the cause of suffering is our desire. If we have desire, or we have the other emotions, this causes suffering. The first noble truth is suffering. The second noble truth is the cause of the suffering. So now we're really, really fundamentally understanding this. And then the cessation is the result of being able to cut things off, being able to manage our lives in a proper, balanced, practical way. And the Eightfold Path, which is the fourth noble truth, is the way in which we conduct our lives to be able to cut ourselves off from attachment and aversion and jealousy and ignorance and greediness and pridefulness and so on like that. So the emotions still are happening, but the difference is that we're not attached to them. We have no aversions to them. So this takes practice to be able to do that, to be able to get to that balance. So the path of insight is part of that manifestation of getting to that point. It says it begins after the highest worldly dharma and consists of calm abiding as a basis for special insight focused on the Four Noble Truths. The four insights correspond to each of the Four Noble Truths, making a total of 16, 8 patient acceptances and 8 awarenesses. So it's bringing all these things together. So this requires some study. This requires some independent time where you're taking this stuff and taking it apart and putting it back together again and thinking about this. Now, not everybody is cut out for this. Not everybody wants to do this. So we have to understand where is our balance point for where we are at this time in our process of being on the path. Some people want to engage in doing deeper things. Some people are not ready. They're more happy just to be at this calm abiding shamatha stage and stay with that. And that's fine. There's no judgment, by anybody else. But it's a personal thing that we have to be able to look at and say, okay, this is where I'm comfortable. So our job right now is just to expose you to these things right now. Not to say that this is what you need to do right now, but to expose it to you, to show you, and to give you permission that if you want to do these things, you can do these things, and that there are help for you along the way to be able to understand that. There's books, the different practices, and there are teachers, and there are brothers and sisters to help you along with this at whatever level you wish to be. So,
Lance.
yes, sir.
Sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
Speaking of whatever you just said, whatever level you would like to be, from this, path that we're looking at right now, from all the lamas, Khenpos, Drupans that or our lineage in the United States. I mean, what do you think? Are there teachers that are able to walk you through all this stages?
Of course. And that's what we're getting. If I appreciate that you're here, with Buddhism 101, Buddhism 102, and so on like that. But remember, all that we're establishing here is really a vocabulary. Like I just said, we're just exposing. If you're not partaking of the teachings of Khenpo Samdrup that he's doing on Zoom right now, if you're not partaking of the teachings that Drupan Tinley Ningpo is doing on Zoom right now, and if you're not partaking of all the other teachers that are on Zoom right now, they're teaching you these things. They're teaching all what these elements are and so on. The way of the Bodhisattva, the 37 practices of the Bodhisattva, the 6 paramitas and so on. And going into much greater detail than what I'm doing. So that's the difference. They are there teaching these things. Are they going to literally take us by the hand and say, well, here's the syllabus and here's what you need to follow and everything? It doesn't work like that. You've got to want to join and see what they're doing and so on. And you begin to bring those puzzle pieces together yourself. They're teaching all all the elements of that. They're teaching you all these different things, and it's not necessarily in a prescribed order. I'm trying to give you some sense of what that order is, because we in the West, we're used to that. In the old country in Tibet, they go through, this whole monastic life and everything. So it's done for them like we went through grade school and middle school and high school and so on. They do that through the monastery. But now as adults, it's a little bit different, and they're not used to that. So that's the benefit of having Western teacher trying to explain, this empirical way of looking at this, but then it's these teachers who are teaching these things. So there's the answer, that you need to be able to tune in to these other things. And Khenpo Samdup, everything he's been doing since February, since March on Zoom, is on YouTube. So you don't have to think that you missed it. You can tune into YouTube and make a commitment of yourself to do these things. And, he's got the books that go along with it, and he goes through it page by page, line by line, word by word, with commentary, to give more detail to it and so on. Very powerful. It's great stuff.
So I understand that, these teachings are being given, and they're very helpful. To me, it makes a lot of sense listening to Buddhism 101 and the 201, because in the way that it came to me, it was like, years ago, here's Buddhism, boom. Here's Grantara, boom. This is how you do it. And I'm like, okay, there's a female deity, most of the time, some female deities are naked, and I'm like, in my mind, what is going on, for a guy, especially like, for guys in America, it's like they have such a hard time visualizing themselves as a naked female and thinking that they're a deity. I'm like, what's going on with that? Is that Buddhism? What? Meditation? So putting it into perspective, that helps tremendously. And just back to what I was saying, is that I see that, yes, indeed, these teachings are given, but I guess my question is to what level you need that teacher, to where you need that personal, like, one-on-one, to walk you through more in-depth teachings and what you got, to guide you through your personal experience with the meditations.
It doesn't work like that. The one-on-one, the way it works is, that there are teachings that are given to everybody. So, whether you're in a shrine room with 20 or 30 other people, and then those 20 or 30 people would request an interview, an audience with the Lama at certain intervals when they feel that they're stuck or something and they need to have that personal conversation with them. But it's through these shrine room teachings and the question and answers that are happening in those shrine rooms at that time, where most of the, where all that is being laid out. And then it's being expected by the Lama that everybody's going home and is practicing this, is taking this and meditating on this. If you're just relying on the time that you're sitting there in the shrine room for the 2 hours on Sunday or something like that for the teaching and not doing any practice, there's not going to be any progress. It's going to be, if any, it's going to be very, very small. So they're expecting that you're going to be practicing this. It's like going to college. When you go to college, you go to you have, your class once a week or twice a week, whatever it is, and then you do your workshops. But then you're supposed to be back in your dorm room or whatever and studying your nuts off to understand what they're talking about. You don't study, you're not going to get a good grade on your final exam.
So basically, it's up to you to
It's
get
up
those
to you.
results.
It's up to you. What kind of a student are you? You know, I mean, from my own experience, when I was in college, I was a terrible student. I didn't like to study. I was there to have a party. You know, I didn't do very well, you know, but once I got out and I got into my 20s and everything, and I really started seeing I got to choose a career, then I started going to adult classes, and I really I made myself study. I learned what it was to do that, and I developed a nice career for myself. And then my spirituality, I really wanted to engage in spirituality. I really took those skills that I learned in my career and really applied them to spirituality, and in the same way. And I've amassed a fair amount of understanding, which is about that much, but it's enough to, you know, keep me going. So, and I think that's the way it has to be. I think that's it. It's the personal commitment that you make to this.
So my next question is like, for knowing that the results that you're getting through the meditation, through your practice, are the real genuine results, is actually you're not ever going to get an answer from that from anybody. Is basically just discovering yourself and having that inner wisdom to realize that this is like equanimity, this is compassion, this is what really is, right?
That's
Or
correct.
how do you, right? Yeah.
It's all within yourself. You're learning about yourself, and what all this wisdom is within you. All this skillful means is within you, and you're just removing all the junk that's blocking it up. You know, it's the overthinking, it's the laziness, it's all the rationalizations we make that I can't do this. You know, you know, if you want a high-speed bullet, you know, to help us to learn what this is, we could talk about that later on. But you know, it's against the law. You got to grow some mushrooms, you know, but then you're not in control. You know, the mushrooms are in control. And I'll tell you, you know, that a lot, the iconography and everything is all inspired by psychedelics, the colors and so on. We were talking about Samantabhadra, you know, Kundu Zangpo. The blue color comes from the mushroom. When you go to the psilocybin mushroom and you go to harvest the mushroom, if you squeeze it, and you get blue on your fingers. And you got to harvest it in a way that you don't necessarily have to get that blue on your fingers. But that blue is symbolic of that transcendence of the psychedelics.
But that blue is also like the sign of release of DMT in your body. You're able to see it with the pineal gland.
Maybe so. Maybe so. You know, so can you do it by yourself, or can you do it with the mushroom? Or once you do it with the mushroom, can you then do it? Then now you're convinced that it's there, and now you can do it by yourself. And then you can do it by yourself without having all the side effects of having to do the mushroom. You know, because the mushrooms have side effects. You know, you get a hangover and all that, you know, and you're sick when you're doing it, you know, but can you do it? Can you attain those levels naturally? And that's what we're trying to show here. It takes a lot of work, but some of us need that shock treatment of doing the psychedelic to get us to that point. Now, the lamas won't talk about this. Most of them don't even know about it. You know, and it's going to be the heavy duty yogis that are going to, you know, if you can talk to them, would talk about these things. When they talk about the soma, they talk about the duchi, they talk about the amrita. What we are doing symbolically, with the empowerments and so on, at one time would have been mushroom tea.
Man.
So it's all about self-discovery and whatever tools that we can use to be able to do that. Psychedelics, different levels of psychedelics, and so on. And, I'm a proponent of that, but I don't recommend it for everybody. It's not there for everybody. And some of it's illegal and so on. But, but it's real. And there's books written about it. If you're interested, I'll give you the titles. You can read them. But that doesn't take the place of actually engaging in the practice. It all comes down to engaging in the practice, whatever tools you use.
And you need to know what is the real motivation to engage in these practices.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's part of what, we're trying to convey here, is to lay it out, here's this, here's this enlightened mind. Do you want that? Or do you prefer just, going around with what we've got? There's fun there. There's happiness there. But it all turns into suffering, and we all got to die in the end. And are we prepared to die? What does that mean? So it's heavy duty stuff, but it's enjoyable stuff. Some people are totally put off by it, and they say, I'm not going there. You're crazy. What is this, a cult? We're going to take the Kool-Aid. They got all kinds of, ideas about what this might be and so on. And if I can't see it, I can't weigh it, I can't measure it, I can't put it in my pocket, it doesn't exist. I'm not going for something that doesn't exist.
Okay. Thank you, Lynn.
Lance, so when we start meeting at the temple again, are you going to be serving tea? I'm just trying to follow this. I'm trying to look ahead.
You're going to want to have oatmeal with me in the morning.
Well, I eat oatmeal, but every day, but I don't get the same push from it you do.
No, I would never suggest that to anybody. I would never surprise anybody with that. But it would be something we would, it has to be done under very controlled circumstances. And there are serious programs at Johns Hopkins here in Baltimore that have been underway for years about this whole process with psychedelics. And, what happened in the 50s and the 60s and was outlawed, kind of went underground, but at the same time, it was being done at Johns Hopkins, in these, in the academic way. And gradually more and more and more, they've been getting more and more authority to conduct these studies and so on. And now it's gotten quite robust.
Well, Timothy Leary kind of made a train wreck out of some of that way back in the 60s and 70s.
Who did?
Timothy Leary.
Well, not exactly. It depends on your point of view. The government made a train wreck out of it. We could talk about that, the politics of that. There's a book called The Politics of Ecstasy. You might want to read that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so back to this, if you want to continue with this. So this path of insight, You know, it's being able to now to take all this stuff that is percolating within ourselves now. We've kind of learned how to settle our minds down. We've learned how to relax. We've learned how to bring this knowledge in, you know, all these different, you know, concepts, spiritual concepts and techniques and so on. And now they start percolating, you know, this wisdom starts percolating. We start getting holes in those blockages. We start, and the light from the indestructible diamond that is our true nature begins to come through. You know, we begin to see that. So then the path of insight is working with all of that. So it's working with, it's working with, you know, the fundamental part is working with the Four Noble Truths and understanding that we are the cause of everything that we do. We're the architects of our life, and we're the engineers that keep it going. And we have to take responsibility for that. So now once we accept that, then we start looking at the mechanisms that we can use to help us to control our lives and so on. So this is all part of the path of insight. So the path of insights is the four kayas, the four vehicles or the four bodies of the Buddha. So there is the Dharmakaya, which is the indescribable, you know, the mind of the Buddha that is indescribable. The prayer of Kuntu Zangpo, you know, that is being elucidated in that prayer, you know, what that is. And then there is the Sambhogagaya. The Sambhogagaya now is taking that non-conceptual and making it conceptual, slowing it down. That non-conceptual, let's say it has this, it's faster than the speed of light. It's beyond our imagination. But once we slow it down, then it begins to coalesce and it begins to take form. So the first form it takes is an intelligent form, you know. And so that's the Sambhogagaya, and that's all these meditational deities. That's the Dhyani Buddhas. That's the Bodhisattvas, the 8 great Bodhisattvas, and so on. So we begin to recognize that, and there's all this system to be able to recognize that. This is the Shitro. This is the Bardo Todal, and so on, and understanding all that. And then the next, and then it slows down more. It slows down more, and then we have the emanation body, which is where now it takes a human form, and it takes it becomes a body. It becomes a human being. So Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha Shakyamuni, is a Nirmanakaya being that is there to be able to talk to you, to see you. You can see them, you can hear them, they can touch each other and so on, to say, yes, this is the embodiment of it. It really is true. And let me tell you about the Sambhogagaya, the enjoyment body. And let me tell you about the Dharmakaya and so on. If we didn't have the emanation body, we may not ourselves be able to understand the Sambhogagaya and certainly not understand the Dharmakaya, because it's just too far out for us. Human beings aren't prepared for that, unless, you know, it takes great teachers to be able to do it. So once we begin to do it and everything, then we ourselves become teachers for ourselves and for others. And then we become the co-emergence of all that. Then we become the totality of that. We become the Swabhavika Kaya. So the Dharmakaya is in the heart center. The Sambhogagaya is in the throat. And the Nirmanakaya is in the body. And the Swabhavika Kaya is in the navel. When all this comes together and it becomes the embodiment of this, and you're getting, and now it becomes the essence of being a complete human being, of becoming a Buddha. So this is all path of insight. So now we get to the 7 perfection branches. So if you look at the bottom of page 2 in the handout, you see here it says the 7 perfection branches. It says the perfect mindfulness. Perfect, perfect. Perfect doesn't mean human. Perfect means something beyond human, beyond into our Buddha nature. The perfect mindfulness, the perfect discrimination, perfect perseverance, perfect joy, perfect relaxation, perfect absorption, and perfect equality. So all this at that Buddha level, you know, and we're getting insights into that. We're getting, you know, we're having moments of lucidity. We're having moments of clarity. We're having moments of emptiness. We're having moments of unimpededness, unimpeded thought, where it's just clear thought, where we don't have these doubts. We can see everything with our heart, with our intellectual mind now becomes in tune with our big mind, with our heart mind, and it becomes wide open. And then, but thoughts can come and go like that. We say, oh, I had that, and now it's gone. You ever had that kind of epiphany where, you know, wow, I had that great thought, but everything became clear to me. It was an aha moment, and now it's gone. But all that's left is I love you. And I know that you love me. And that's all that's left. And I have compassion for myself for not being able to hold it. And I have compassion for you for your suffering. But I got a way to go back in, and I got a way to be able to make that finger snap now become much broader, much deeper, become what becomes a glimpse now becomes a vision. So this is the perfection branches of enlightenment. So these are the insights, and you know, so it's, you know, this is being a yogi. This is more than just being a practitioner. This is being a yogi, being in union with it, where now you have made the kinds of decisions where the commitments are much greater. You know, it's, you know, look, it's very practical. You got families, you got responsibilities. You've got to see those things through. If you broke from those now, it would cause great suffering in your life and in their lives, and you wouldn't be able to achieve the peace of mind that you need to achieve to be able to get to these levels. So now you got to see it through. But at the same time saying that, you can be developing these techniques to be able to get you to the point when you can retire from your obligations as they are now, and you get to those later years of your life. Now you can use those years now to become these perfections where you can make those commitments. And if you can't do it then you do it in your next life after that. And the next life after that. And the next life after that, however many lives it takes, you know, and they all just become, you know, finger snaps. Time is gone. So it says the Guru Yoga is basically the path of insight that leads to the path of meditation. So this Guru Yoga now is all this percolation. There's all this stuff. It's a combination between meditation and wisdom that comes up and investigation, vipassana, you know. But now we're not looking at things like the 5 poisons. We're past that now. We're not looking at that. Now we're looking at the purification of of wisdom awareness. This is the purification of wisdom awareness. There are two obscurations. There's the obscuration of afflictive emotions, and there's the obscuration of mental obscurations, where we think we know. And we have to let go of thinking that we know to be able to experience this wisdom that comes up that is beyond human wisdom. And then we find a way to be able to incorporate it into our body, speech, and mind. This is the Swabhavika Kaya, where all this all comes together. This is the co-emergence. So then we move on. You want to take a break? Anybody need to get up and take a break or something? Do we continue on, or you?
I want to refill my tea.
Okay, ahead. All right. William and Bonnie, you seem to be enjoying this. I see some big smiles on your faces. Am I not seeing properly, or what?
You are seeing what you're seeing. Yes.
Oops. Oops.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. You know, what we experienced back in the 60s and the 70s, you know, was a paradigm shift in consciousness that only happens once every 100 years or so. And we were fortunate to be able to experience that. Now, what has been happening every few years, we see, you know, ripples in that. So it's like being on a pond, and like taking a rock and throwing it in the middle of the pond, and there's the big explosion. And then there are these ripples that happen until there's another big explosion, another rock falling in the pond, which happens once every 100 years or so. So our generation got to experience that in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. The younger generation, is going to experience that in the year 2050 or 2050, 2060, something like that. There will be another huge paradigm shift. And I told you about this a few weeks ago. I told you about The White Hole in Time, the book called The White Hole in Time by Peter Russell, and whether or not you went out and got a copy of it and so on. But he talks about this, and it's mind-blowing.
It's the white hole in time.
The White Hole in Time. And to be able to see that, you know, the evolution of man in terms of enlightenment.
I've heard of that book.
Yeah, it's a Peter Russell wrote the book called TM. I've told you this.
Yeah.
It's no joke.
Of course, I would remember the 60s and 70s. It was a tumultuous time. I was up here in '69, and had been reclassified 1A because I had graduated from college. And a friend of mine came to me here just I was about to have to go back home, and he said, "Gary, you got to go with us. Everybody's gathering. You know, everybody's going to be there. Janis Joplin, Joan Baez, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. You know all the names." I said, "I can't. I've just been called up from a physical. I've got to go back to Arkansas." He said, "Hey, it's going to be a great concert. There may be 10,000 people there." Well, there were about 400,000. I said, "Where is this place anyway?" He said, "Oh, I don't know, some little pissant town called Woodstock." I said, "I never heard of it." And the rest is history. I went back and got my physical, and he went to Woodstock, or I would have been there.
I'll
Maybe
tell
it's
you,
better that I wasn't.
I wasn't there, you know, and I kind of came alive in the 70s, in the early 70s. And I gave everything away. you know, you know, my first marriage was gone, and you know, and you know, I went off into you know, the spiritual quest. I gave everything away. I gave books away. I gave, you know, instruments away. I gave record albums, everything that I had, you know, and I moved around, you know, for some time. And then slowly, I started putting pieces back together again, you know, and looked for a way to be able to, I had to be practical. I had to put a career together, but I knew that my spirituality, what I experienced then was the Dharmakaya, you know, everything became clear. And then slowly, then, you know, when I got to be 50, 55 years old, then I said, well, I gotta find a way to really explain this. I started reading again, and I met a guy who introduced me to Peter Russell as an author. And that was Michael Pinder. If you know Michael Pinder was the keyboardist of the Moody Blues.
Mm.
And so he introduced me to him. Peter Russell introduced me to the writer Ken Wilber, and then Ken Wilber introduced me to Buddhism. I'd already considered myself a Buddhist from years and years and years and years ago. Back, you know, 40 years ago, I considered myself a Buddhist, but I really didn't know the Dharma. You know, but what I had read and what I had experienced was a Buddha experience. I had experienced a Jesus Christ experience. I experienced a Krishna experience. I experienced a Moses experience. You know,
One of the things that you find out eventually is that you talk about all this stuff, and it's just out there somewhere out in Never Land. You talk about it, you read about it, and it doesn't do anything until you make the decision that you're going to do something, and then all of this that you've been talking about, you actually incorporate in yourself, and you bring out all of the love and compassion and insights. But until you get to the point that you want to be that and experience and be that, it's just BS floating around.
Yeah.
true. It's all a matter of perspective.
Lance, do you think this time of COVID and isolation and people having to take a different look and perspective of things could be a time of awakening for people?
It could be a cause for it, sure, but I don't think it's the paradigm shift that we're looking for. You know, that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
It's when there is an enlightenment, there is a truth, and with it comes a something that happens on the nadir. You know, it always is. There's a terrible war. There is a terrible pestilence or something that happens with that. You know, and look at the 1800s. What was the paradigm shift in the 1800s?
In the where?
In the 1800s. In the 1800s, India became opened up.
Okay.
The British went into India. And what about the great authors? What about like Lewis Carroll and you know, people that wrote, you know, some of these great children's stories they were all psychedelically induced,
Mhm.
you know, and this was all, you know, part of this liberation that was happening. You know, the Theosophical Society, Madame Blavatsky, and all this kind of stuff was happening. You know, and Edgar Casey became a ripple of that, you know, several years later and so on, several decades later. But there was a great awakening that was happening in the 1800s and 19th century around the world.
So Lewis Carroll was high when he wrote Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That changes my whole view of that.
You didn't know that?
A cup of tea, so?
When I was a little boy, I just thought he had a vivid imagination.
Oh, that's a trip, man.
He had a lot of imagination.
No,
A
I did not
river.
know that.
Yeah.
It was a river of imagination.
Yeah. So, and then in the 20th century, you know, was the time of Vietnam, but also was a time of civil rights. There was political stuff that was happening, but also was this psychedelic, you know, explosion that happened, you know, to so many people in our generation, you know, that haven't lost that. So for me now, it's been a means of now it's being able to teach. It's being able to share this experience, to be able to say, to give it some authenticity, to say, yeah, this really does happen. And I didn't lose my mind in the process, because a lot of people lost their minds in the process. I mean, Timothy Leary was one of them. I went to a lecture that he gave, you know, a couple of years before he died, and he was, you know, he was dodging the UFOs while he was talking, you know.
Well, that was what I meant when I said he certainly didn't give a good impression about, you know, the power of psychedelics to do
Well,
that.
you know, everything can be a medicine and a poison,
Yes.
you know. So it's a matter of degree, isn't it? How much you take, you know, things like that.
When I was a teenager, my doctor told me that every medicine had a little bit of poison in it.
Of course.
I didn't understand fully what he meant, but
yeah. So it wasn't until I discovered the Dharma that I was really able to understand what happened in the psychedelic time. Then I understood. So I tell you these, you know, I got nothing to hide, you know. Okay, so let's move on now to the so just to finish again, the Guru Yoga is basically the path of insight that leads to the path of meditation. So if we don't have the Guru Yoga, it's really hard to have the path of insight, because the path of insight is getting those glimpses that come through. And it's these deities that help us to do that. It can also be done, you know, with these psychedelics and so on. But with this, we have control. It's more subtle, but it's more powerful. I can tell you that. It's much more powerful, and you're in control. And that is the best way to do it. No question about it. But if you're impatient, you know, you're not going to, you know, you're going to have a problem. So you got to develop patience. That's why patience is one of the paramitas. Okay. So now we go to the path of meditation. So this is the Mahamudra. So the Mahamudra means the great seal. The mudra means the seal. The mudra means many different things. You know, the description I like the best is the great commitment to the meditation. You know, it's the seal of the meditation saying, okay, here's the meditation, you know, and I'm going to, here's the seal. This is the emblem. This is the ensign of what this is. You know, I am the ensign. I am the seal of enlightenment. You know, but I think it's better described as the commitment. I am the result of the commitment that I made to the meditation. So the Mahamudra, the path of meditation. Why is it called the path of meditation? Because there one becomes familiar with the realization, becomes familiar with the realizations that one achieved in the path of insight. I'll say it again. One becomes familiar with the realizations that one achieved in the path of insight, which we just came through. So we become familiar with it. We become familiar with the practices. We become familiar with the generation of the practices. We become familiar with the completion of the practices. We become familiar with the result of the practices. And we're beyond our thought process as a human being. And you don't realize it until you come back. You know, we talk about, we talk about samadhi meditation. You know, we talk about, yogis, Hindu yogis who go into trances. You know, what happens? What is this? What is this saying? What are these words? What do they mean? You know, it means going into this state of mind that is beyond the ability to be able to have a verbal consciousness, to be able to have an eye consciousness, to be able to have a feeling consciousness. All that is just left behind. It's just put on hold. It's transcended. So, back in the day, we say you blow your mind, and then you don't realize that you did it until after you come back. When things start to coalesce again, when things begin to slow down and you come back in, being an ordinary human being again. But you're never the same, because now you have the experience, you have the benefit of that experience, and you bring that back with you. And now you have to assimilate that into your life. What did that do to my life? Now I'm never going to do certain things anymore, because I realized what foolishness it was, how harmful it was to me or to other people and so on. So I'm going to be an actor of love. I'm going to be a character of love. I'm going to be a character of compassion. I'm going to be a deity, some kind of a deity. Maybe I'm not that good to be able to really be called a deity, but I'm always going to have those moments with me. So this path of meditation begins after the realization of special insight that we are the deity. It begins with that, this meditation. And the two paths, the path of worldly meditation practice and the path of practice beyond the world. So we got to blast off. So all the phrases, all the cliches that came out of the 60s and 70s, they all mean stuff. You blow your mind, far out, all these things, were things that, we experience. And we can experience them today through meditation, through doing these practices. you can get to the far out point and you see everything is far out, the phenomenal world, to look at the phenomenal world as now all the possibilities. It's far out. We have so many possibilities. So the path of meditation, beyond the world and within the world, and being able to see those two. The worldly meditation practice is the four formlessnesses and the four absorptions. So I already talked about the four absorptions, that we were catching glimpses of those when we were in the path of application. We're meditating, we're learning to meditate, and we're getting those glimpses. We're meditating, but we're just getting the glimpses. Now we're getting into the visions. Now we're getting into that mind of meditation where you stay there for hours and hours and hours, days and days and days, weeks and weeks and weeks, months and months and months, and your life is changed. It's not just something that you experience like a ride on a roller coaster, and then you get out of it and you throw up and you forget about it. but it's something that is transformative, and you are controlling it. You are controlling your mind. So we go through the four formlessness, the four absorptions, then where it's much more stable, it's much more pronounced. It's like, we can really see it. We're understanding it. And then we go through the four formlessnesses, which is beyond the four absorptions. And the four formlessnesses are increasing the infinite nature of space. Increasing the infinite nature of space, which means our realization of it, our realization of the infinite nature of space. And then increasing the infinity of consciousness within that space. And that space has no boundaries. And this consciousness has no boundaries. And increasing the nothing whatever. It says here, increasing the nothing whatever-ness, whatever, whatsoever-ness. So everything is gone, man. All concepts are gone. Everything is whatever. It's all blown away. And increasing neither perception or non-perception. Up to this point, we've got perception. And we kind of vacillate between non-perception. At times we have this but now we are beyond that and totally free. So I hope you have the notes here, or you've been writing them down anyway. I read these years and years and years and years and years ago. And all of a sudden, it was just like 1,000 of those puzzle pieces came together for me. All of a sudden, now I had some wisdom that I didn't have before. Some intellectual wisdom that I didn't have before. And then I could go back in and I could just really enjoy it now. I wasn't fighting with it. I just relaxed with it. And you got to make the commitment to time. It doesn't happen in a 15-minute meditation. It doesn't happen in a 2-hour meditation. It doesn't happen by reciting 10 mile rounds. It happens by doing it, 100,000 rounds. 1 million recitations. This is what we need to do it. You can take a pill. You can blow your mind by doing that, or you can do it through the commitment that you make to doing these practices, and you're much more control. You much more understand what is happening. It's not just like a film that you're in a theater watching. You are part of it. It's a whole different experience. It's the real experience. It's reality. So the four formula systems. So intellectually looking at these and contemplating these, maybe gives you some confidence and motivation and permission to make the commitments. So then it says the three purposes of practicing meditation. Why should I do this? So number one is suppressing the afflictive emotions, which are the subject of abandonment in the path of meditation. So let me do this again. Suppressing the afflictive emotions, which are the subject of abandonment, in the path of meditation. So what this means, suppressing, it means cutting them off for as long as we can cut them off. Things still happen. When we come out of the meditation, then ordinary things start happening again. But now we are experiencing it now with the benefit of having had this meditation. And we realize that, here's that stupid thought about killing somebody. Here's that stupid thought about, sexual pleasures. Here's that stupid thought that I used to follow about having, a big house and lots of cars. And now I have the power to just cut it off. I'm just going to, what am I thinking about that for? Or just being able to compartmentalize it and say, I don't need to think about that. It's a thought, it's a mundane thought for an ordinary human being. And do I really need to think about that? Which are the subject of abandonment in the path of meditation. So to get to the path of meditation that we're talking about, we have to give all those things up. We just cut them off. I'm going to stop thinking about that. I remember when I was working on fear. And for quite a while, there was always fear. I was dealing with fear all the time. I saw fear in everything that I was doing, during this time when I was really in the meditation. And I mean, this was a couple of years. And I got to a point where I realized, the only thing that I need to fear is the fear itself, that famous saying, the fear itself. And once I realized that, it was gone. And at that time, I lived in a place that had a whole wall was all glass that overlooked the woods. And it was a beautiful place and everything. And as I had that thought, a whole flock of birds just flew right by my window. And the feeling of liberation, the feeling of freedom, the feeling of being without that fear was just gone with that. I've never gone back. And was that a I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting there. a thought where, you know, where the observer affects what is happening around you. What's that called? Somebody help me.
Biocentrism.
What is it?
Quantum. Biocentrism.
Quantum. Was that a quantum moment?
Yeah.
Was that a quantum moment?
Biocentrism is emergent from quantum physics, and what is his name, Bohr,
Yeah.
OER. And I'm reading the second book on that. It's consciousness creates reality, basically.
Okay, so was it a coincidence or was it a quantum moment? Or was a quantum moment a coincidence? You know, all these possibilities. All I know the net result is my fear is gone.
I didn't read the word coincidence in there.
Well, I just introduced it because that's what I think some people might say. Oh, well, it was just a coincidence. You happened to think about that, and then all of a sudden that flock of birds took off. Well, for me, it had great meaning.
Gary,
Well,
what is that word? I'm sorry, this is new to me. I want to write it down and look at it later. Can you repeat that?
What's the idea of quantum physics?
Right.
You know, and that the observer is part of what is being observed, and has a relationship to the outcome of what is being observed. Just the act of observing creates a difference of reaction. I don't know if that's explaining it very well, but it's the whole thing about the theory of relativity. You know, there's the theory of relativity on one side, and then there's quantum physics on the other side.
There's a YouTube video of that, Zara, you can watch. It explains it pretty well.
Where is that? In the
You
chat
can
box?
you can YouTube it. I think it's yeah, it's somewhere on YouTube.
there are three books by Robert Lanza. Three books that's biocentrism, beyond biocentrism, and the latest one, which I'm reading now, is The Grand Biocentric Design. And it emerged from Einstein was a classical physicist, but it emerged in the early 1900s with the work of Dr. Robert Bohm, B-O-E-M.
Dr. Bohm.
And Robert Lanza is the author. He's the co-author of these three books to which, so you might look into those.
All right. Well, anyway, so what
Thank
those
you.
books, what all that is the stuff that we leave behind. You know, so we have all this knowledge that we're developing, all this science that we're developing, but remember, it all has to do with being a human being. It all has to do with the intellectualization of what all these appearances of this phenomenal nature of what our interpretation of what all this is. And that is holding us back. That's like this anchor that is keeping us from being free, of being able to blast off beyond that into other dimensions, into the Mahamudra, into enlightenment, into the mind of the Buddha.
That's kind of where you get this test of what your actual belief is in compared to reality. What do I have to fear? But why do I have to fear? I have no reason to fear. And when you realize that, it's gone.
Well, that's emptiness. You know, that's what emptiness is. You know, so we can spend our time, and I don't mean, I'm not trying to be critical, but I'm just trying to say that we can spend our time looking at all the scientific stuff, or we can spend our time looking at all the spiritual stuff. As we look at the spiritual stuff, we're going to be able to see whatever we know about the scientific stuff already. And we're going to be able to say, man, Was I wrong? It's interesting stuff, this scientific stuff. But but with this spiritual stuff, there's something else there. So let me carry on. So the purpose of practicing meditation, number 2, is establishing the special qualities, which is bodhicitta, of the 4 immeasurables. This is where the more that we stabilize the meditation in our lives, the more the bodhicitta becomes stabilized and becomes richer, becomes more the fabric of who we are, what we do. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So where's the fault in any of that? So as we do the meditation, that gets stronger. And then the third purpose of practicing meditation is creating the foundation for the path beyond the world. Now, what does that mean? It means putting yourself in a rocket and blasting off. Bye. And that's the equipoise. That's the equipoise. You've heard the word equipoise, and that's the sublime balance, the sublime equanimity of the Buddha, the image of the Buddha that is sitting there. You see his physical body. You see his eyes, just a slit open at the bottom of his eyes, just a little bit, completely composed, completely balanced. And you know that his heart is just wide open and in complete equipoise. No boundaries, no limitations, no expectations, no qualifications, no judgments, no prejudices, just being. Just being. Just peace. Just bliss. Just equanimity. Just unimpededness. Beyond the world, equipoise. So these are the 3 purposes for meditation. Now, if you're not interested in that, I'll take it back. You don't have to go. So it's up to you. It's up to each one of us. And the only way that it can be recognized is through our own cultivation practices and so on. So now, well, there's not a lot of time. Yeah, we got, so I think we ought to leave it here. But just as a teaser, we're going to talk more about what this meditation practice beyond the world is, because that's the next part of this. And remember, all this comes from the Book of Liberation, of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. That's the title of the book that this comes from. This was written by Gampopa 1,000 years ago. And it is called the Lamb Rim Text, and it means stages of the path, the stages of the path to Buddhahood. And what we are learning is how to become a Buddha. This is the instruction manual on how to become a Buddha. So we can accomplish a great deal in this lifetime. within ourselves. And that's all that we need to do. So, any comments or questions, please? Okay, I see you're there. And Zara, what do you guys think of this?
This is great. I am very much enjoying all of this.
Okay, good. I'm not too getting too crazy on everybody, am I?
No, actually, I've often been scared of sometimes hearing about people's experiences with Kundalini yoga and some of these like psychedelic experiences they describe. I was like, whoa, what is that? I don't know if I want to experience that. It sounds a little scary if you don't know what's going on. But you know, the more you think about it, if you do it not with drugs, it's like a stabilized way where you're in control, and it's probably more enjoyable that way. So no,
Well,
I'm enjoying.
right. And that's what this is all about. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Zara, what do you think?
I enjoyed the organic side conversation tonight that came up. I was taking it all in, actually. I'm still taking it in this moment. I'm digesting some what I would consider profound sort of insight into the conversation of what was discussed, and got a couple YouTube videos to watch at this point from Adrian and Michael. So thank you both for sending those to me.
There's another one you might like called Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds.
Okay.
Isn't that what it was called, Gary?
Yeah.
Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds.
Yeah.
I think I might have sent that to you too, Sarah.
It's a
Okay.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's 6. The first 3 are fantastic.
Okay,
Mhm.
Adrian, what do you think of the conversation tonight?
Mind blown, sir.
Right thing to say, Adrian. You're kissing up.
Okay, good. Okay.
I
Gary, how about you?
understand now. I understand the Mad Hatter and Alice in Wonderland now.
Yeah, go back and read that.
You look at that again. Now I understand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Michael, how about you? You haven't said anything tonight. How about you?
Well, I've been tripping since 1970.
Do you have you in your meditative experiences? I mean, have you drawn on those psychedelic experiences in any way?
Absolutely. Yeah. About 1 out of 50 of my experiences with psychedelics, whether they be, lab created or organic, peyote and mescaline and things like that. About 1 out of 50 are pretty cosmic conscious creating. So you get really, whereas we get glimpses in Vajrayana practice and steady practice and daily practice and contemplating with the Sangha, we I think we see little pinholes in our obscurations, but like you said, you could take a pill and the wall sort of cracks open big, and you get a sort of a sustained look at what's on the other side of the wall. And because at least because I was a child, and probably still am when it comes to looking at those things, it was a rush of madness. It's wondrous to experience, and it can keep you it can leave you drained and wondering and going back for more. And that's how I spent a couple decades of my life. But
So now why are you meditating?
because I'm prepared to stitch all those little pieces together, all of those glances and glimpses and hints and all the UFOs I chased and the telepathy and the astral projection and all of the mysticism that I, followed and played with. I think I have it all sitting in a big basket, and I think meditation, especially from the Mahamudra school, is going to help me put it together seamlessly, and be able to walk into the last 10 or 12 years of my life with a bigger and better picture of what reality is, and one that won't necessarily change, but with the next pill.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie, William?
Something.
Go ahead.
Well, some of the things that you were talking about tonight, Lance, brings back a memory that I think I shared with you of, I didn't do psychedelics, but the drugs that I was doing to give that high feeling that we were talking about. When I started meditating and doing other practices, I found that I felt higher and freer and happier from those than I did from the drugs. And it's like the drugs brought me down, and I didn't have to depend on the drugs to achieve that. And I think everyone here is just so fortunate to be here learning these things and doing these practices, because it just changes life completely, changes our mind space and the way we view things in life. And the teachers that we have available are just so phenomenal.
Very good.
I'm
William,
grateful.
thank you.
Well, I don't know where to start. Talked earlier about Kundalini. That's something that you have to experience, because what connects us to all of this is our chakras, our endocrine system, between the real world and the inner world. And you have to gently, or you can do it with pills, gently open up and get to the space where you got your third eye and able to see things, able to do things. One of the things that I discovered along the way is what they call siddhas. And that's these special things that people do. They can read your mind, and they can do this back and forth, and they can communicate over 200 or 300 miles or 1,000 miles just through meditation. But that's not what it's all about. When we break it down and we finally find out that it's all about I am you, and everything, we're all one, and we're one in nature, we're one in our abilities, our practices, things like this. And that saying of do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, it's it's that when I do something for you, I'm really doing it for myself, because we are one. But you can't just think that. You have to be that. And it's right now opening up and realizing that it's all here for you, and it's beautiful. I don't know, beauty before me, beauty behind me, beauty above, beauty below, beauty all around. It's wonderful.
Well,
And that's kind of my experience.
it's being free. Being free is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Tom, you just came in. Did you have anything you'd like to add to what you might have heard?
I love everyone and everyone loves me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much. We'll continue the conversation next week. And we'll have Buddhism 101 on Monday night. And we're doing 201 and so on. So if you'd like to join the other things that we do, you're welcome to join us. So if you have any questions you want to write or call or something, I'll be more than glad to talk to anybody. But thank you all. I'm going to do the closing prayers. And we'll do the page 20 and 21 and 22 in our prayer book.
This is the prayer book right here.
Yeah. So if you can follow along with me, it would be great. Read out loud. It'd be wonderful. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shavaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings with my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. may I in any case gain the supreme estate of, may I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, ah, hom. Om, ah, hom. Om, ah, hom. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. Thank you all very much.
Lance, how many more sessions are in 102?
Until we finish the book.
Oh, okay. Now I was just curious if in the outline that you're sending right now, is that the larger outline for what's guiding upcoming conversations as you're going into each chunk?
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's 20 chapters, 21 chapters, excuse me. 21 chapters, so we're on chapter 18, but each one of these is pretty deep.
Yeah. Oh, it's good stuff. I was just interesting. It's really good. I feel like I feel like I do it multiple times to digest when you hear things over again, like second or third time.
Yeah.
Other aspects.
And if we need to take a 2-week break or something like that, over the holiday, if y'all want to do that, that's fine. We can talk about that. But I'm fine with moving straight ahead because, we're all home. And what else? What can you do better than this?
True.
Okay. All right. So thank you again. I'll see you soon.
Thank you all. Everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Okay. Have a
Thank you.
safe holiday, whatever you decide to do. And hopefully, you'll keep it close. I see you're wearing your mask. Good girl.
My nephew.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
Be safe,
Good
stay
night.
healthy.
Good night.
All right.
Everyone, good
Good night,
night.
everybody.